Hey there! Welcome to season 2 of RaiseTheBrow with Nishka and Malaika. If you've been with us through season 1 and are still here, then hey, we love you. And if you're new here, then welcome. This season, we have lined up stories of some kick-ass Indians from across the globe who are reshaping our Indian society by being who they are. Because, log kya bolenge. This season, we are also bringing in some experts on relationships, love, sex, life, and everything that happens in between. So, we hope you enjoy this episode as much as we have enjoyed putting it together.
Hi, Nivi. Welcome to Raise the Brow with Nishka and me. And how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me on Raise the Bro. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
How are you
How's
guys
your day
doing?
going, Nishka?
My day is going amazing.
Oh, amazing. Oof.
Amazing.
Is this your first podcast, Nivi?
No, I have done a few podcasts before. I think
Oh,
this is like my fourth or fifth podcast. So I tend to do a bit of podcast and live as I go by.
So, for our
good.
listeners out there, Dr. Nivi is Dr. Niveditha, formally calling her, is your one stop shop for all things sexual health, and she is on this amazing mission to un-taboo. So, which is why she's here on our podcast, and which
Yep.
is why we love her. So, so Nivi, today we are here to discuss how to build trust in intimate relationships, how to tell your partner that you're not sexually satisfied, the difference between consent and coercion, and most importantly, how to say no in the bedroom.
Yep.
That's the big one. I don't
Yes.
even know how to
It's
navigate that.
actually a big one. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, it's a bit scary to even say it. So that's a
Yep.
big one.
It's not
Yeah.
easy. Yep.
So, Nivi, you stumbled into sexual health quite by chance, and it's something that you hadn't planned for. You studied something else, and now you're doing something else. Tell us how that happened.
Right. See, on saying that, I should say that I studied dermatology in India. And when I studied dermatology in India, the venereology degree, which is the sexual health, actually comes as a combined degree with dermatology. So I did study venereology, but our venereology training, I think, is very clinical, like in the sense we are really trained to diagnose STIs really well, and we know how to manage them and how to treat them, and we're such fantastic clinicians in that point. So that's what I was actually trained to do, and I think I did that pretty well. But I think only later during, as I grew in my career, I learned that that is actually not enough for sexual health, and that's actually not enough training at all, and that's not what is needed. It's not like fever, cold, cough where you diagnose and treat the illness. There is so much more that is involved in sexual health, and I think that is lacking even in training back home. So kind of with that kind of a background, I came to Sydney and I was looking for a job in dermatology. And I think it just so happened it's such a high demand job in derm everywhere. And that year, because I was a new immigrant, I really did not get a job in derm. And people recognized this venereology degree and they said, "Oh, but you have this. Do you want to take this job in sexual health?" And I said, "Is that a whole department on its own?" And they said, "Yeah, it is." And I said, "Oh, what do you do all day long in a whole department for sexual health?" Because I studied it part of like it was a very minimum and a very unspoken, subtle part of my degree. So I said, "Okay, fine. Let's go and see what is happening." And I thought it's going to be really like nothing. So I went and took the job, and I thought, okay, next year I'm definitely going to get into the derm job, and I took the sexual health job, and I think it is 11 years now that I'm still in the same job, doing the same thing because I fell in love with that job. And I thought, it was at the back of my mind, this is something that my country needs. This is something what I should give back because that's something I didn't have. And I know that is definitely lacking in India. And I was thinking, it's something that I need to go back and give, because when I grew up, I knew as a youngster, there were sexually active people, whether they were married or not. We had friends and colleagues. We were also, who were sexually active, dating at that point, who were scared about pregnancy. So there were so much important things. Still, luckily, we were all medical students, I think. So we knew where to go and, access things or read up things and do things for ourselves. But if you were not medical person, or if you were a lame youngster in India, I think the state of affairs would have been really scary, and that's why we have all these terminations and abortions that's illegally done, and people dying out of it. They rather die trying terminating that pregnancy rather than saying that they are pregnant and they're not married. So that amount of stigma, that amount of fear, and not knowing where to go is still going on. So I feel like I need to come back and give something back. We need to change dynamics from the very base, and it's going to take a while. So it's really nice to see how so many sex educators and so many of us are actually out there doing. But I feel like there are also very little dermatology and venereologist, because I think dermatology in its cosmetic side is more lucrative than venereology. But I feel like venereology is the need of the hour. So I feel like all of us as doctors need some kind of training to ask the right questions, to be in a non-judgmental way, and to take this forward in our community, right from probably where in the level of MBBS. So I think that's where we need to get in and start talking about how we can actually train our future doctors. You can't just assume doctors to, some people are from conservative background, different people are from different cultures and upbringing, and I totally get it. But when it comes to a medical college, I think this is something that has to be taught as to what you need to ask, what you need to look for, what are your responsibilities when you're actually dealing with a youngster with sexual symptoms or emotional symptoms, then what you need to ask. So those things are very important. So I think that's where all my training and where I've moved forward has come through, and that's the whole thing about why I actually do this as well.
Yeah, that sounds pretty amazing. And you really hit the nail on the head with how scary it is in India today in terms of sexual health and illegal abortions and very, very unsafe practices, because how you said very rightly, it's easier to be unsafe and possibly
Yeah,
die
take
than
risk
bring
and die
shame.
better than
Yes, yeah,
yes,
then bring shame, quote unquote
yes,
shame, to your family and everybody else, also
yeah.
your
And you're
partner's family and your
bringing the
partner.
stigma, yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. And as a
yeah,
woman,
which
again,
is
there's
sad.
different stigma attached, because once they
Yeah.
know that you are the one who got pregnant, and it's like it's not about the male, it's about the female.
Yeah, that's right. And the whole pregnancy is kind of like your responsibility. It's not like
Yeah,
somebody else could have actually done contraception. I think people think that, oh, pregnancy, you have the uterus, so it is your responsibility. I think again, that's a very, very wrong attitude. A uterus owner is not alone responsible for contraception. The other person has to be as well.
yeah, for sure. So
Mm.
I think you said this almost twice, that in your education in venereology, a lot of sexual aspect of it was very subtle and unspoken. So when you moved from India to Australia and you were in Sydney and you got into sexual health, did you personally experience a culture shock of sorts, that you had to get in so deep into something that you actually didn't have a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
background or training or even growing up in? Because we don't grow up like that in India, where you talk very openly about sex, sexual health, how to take care of yourselves,
No.
unless you come from a
And
home
and
which actually is
and
very
not
sex
being
positive.
judged.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't think I grew up in an era where sex positive was not even a thing. I think when I grew up, I thought sex positivity is in my head. I was thinking, I don't think anybody is thinking the way I'm thinking, because I thought something was actually wrong with the way I'm thinking. You're made to believe that, oh my God, don't don't think like that. Even they go to the level of stopping you from thinking what you're thinking. I used to feel like, oh, everybody's having sex. And then how come we're not talking about contraception, or what about, STIs? And, when you're reading, especially when you're studying venereology, you're thinking, oh, they're saying all these things about syphilis. It used to be in my head. The sex positivity was not a real thing for me. And when I came here, I remember my boss, I always tell the story. I remember my boss saying, okay, like I had this young 18-year-old girl, and he said, do you want to take a sexual history? And I looked at him and I said, okay, 18-year-old, if I ask her she's having sex or not, That is very powerful for me because I wouldn't dare do that back home. I don't think I can look at an 18-year-old and actually say, do you have sex? So I thought, okay, he's asking me to ask her whether you have sex or not. So I did ask her that. So I said, are you sexually active? Do you have sex or not? And she said, yes. And I looked at him and he said, yeah, go on. And I was like, I really did not know. I was like, yeah, I asked her. Yes, she's having sex. And I stopped there. That was good enough for me because that itself was something that I was not taught or could not dare ask to an 18-year-old. And then he pulled out like a 2 pages of history, 2 pages of
Wow.
sexual history taking. Literally, I still do it. We still do it in my workplace where we go through 2 pages of sexual history. And I'm thinking, what? And literally he said, just go through this. And he showed me with this girl how he took over and he went through this whole history. Amazing. Like amazing in the sense, not a whinge, not a thing in his face, not one, eyebrow or expression, nothing, and no judgment. And it was amazing. I fell in love with that field just, straight away because the way you ask, I mean, I think I had a good skill that I've learned the skill now. I've learned the skill of how I really make it so easy within 5 minutes because I have half an hour with a patient and I need to break the iceberg right there. I need to tell them I'm confidential, I'm non-judgmental. You got to open yourself to me. I'm going to help you here. And it has to happen within 5 minutes. And I think it's an art. It's an art that has to be taught. You can't expect doctors to actually be inborn with it. And I feel that is something that we have to teach people. We have to start teaching people in India, especially doctors. Just the amount of detailed work we go in to actually provide the right care is just fantastic. And it's done in a very, very non-judgmental way. And I think by the time we end a consultation, we leave people thinking that I'm in the right place. He doesn't care. I can tell her whatever. And that also gives us questions. We also put in questions of screening, we call. We're asking, are you a victim of domestic violence? Is anybody threatening you? Are you threatened of someone? And we ask, have you ever been, we never use the word abuse or rape because it's very, intimidating for a lot of people who have actually gone through it. So we phrase it like saying, have you ever been forced to have any sex at all in your life? And once you gain the confidence and put these questions forward, even when people don't do it in the first consultation, they will come back if they know they have to talk to you or if they have something to tell you, and stuff like that. So they definitely do come back and talk to you about it. So for me, everything was surprising, everything was amazing, and the amount of gratitude that people showed to you to be actually doing this and to be able to bring this out of them and support them with counseling and the right testing and psychologist support or whatever. It can be very traumatic, these experiences, and expecting people to actually keep it within themselves and cope with it and somehow face the world is just unrealistic.
It's unfair. Yeah, it's unfair.
And
Yeah.
that's not necessary, and that's a
Yeah.
bit too much. So that's how this happened, and yeah.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. I was just thinking while you were talking about this, there's only one time in India where I've met uh actually an OBGYN who was very, very subtle in her questioning. I think she's the only one I've ever met in India who actually made the effort to ask me about my sexual history. And I wasn't married then. So I remember how she did it, and I never forget it because it's my favorite story to share because I found it so funny yet also so great. So I remember I
Great.
was with my mom, and so I went into the the little booth you go to get
Yes,
inspected.
examination. Yes,
Yeah,
I know.
and at this time this is at least 6 years back, and she's a much older doctor. So she goes, and I was thinking it was going to be pretty straightforward, and she does the most coolest thing. She nudges me and whispers. She's like, "Are you sexually active?" And
Oh,
I was
so
like,
sweet. At least she bothered to
"What?"
ask.
Yeah. I was like,
Thank
"What?"
God.
Yeah. And the thing is, so I mean, we are lucky we come from a home where we were very sex positive always. Our mom gave us the talk and she told us how to use protection, what to do if we
God.
get pregnant and everything. So we are blessed. So I found it comical because I was like, it's funny, my mom is right there, but she's making an effort to ask me, which I found so amazing. So she
It's
asked me
great.
about if I have sex, my sexual history,
What do
Oh,
I
so good.
use?
Very
Protection,
good.
and
Very good.
if
Was
I've
she
had an
was she
STI.
trained there? Was she trained in India or
Yeah,
she went and
yeah, I
studied
actually had
somewhere
no
else and came
idea.
back
I never even, it's possible. You asked the right question. It's very possible she came
from
uh,
somewhere? Oh, because I
from
would.
somewhere
You
else.
know what I mean? If I came to India
Yeah,
and I
yeah, yeah.
worked, I
Yeah,
would be
yeah,
like, smashing the
yeah.
question right there.
So, Nivi, this is something I've actually read multiple times, and I want to talk to you about this. That there is a relationship between your sexual health and your sexual encounters with your mental health. How much truth is there to that? And could you tell us with an example?
Yes. See, I think it is very, very important the connection between one's sexual health and mental health because a sexual health is actually something that people identify themselves as. And I think a sexual need or your sexuality is how you identify yourself as. So it is actually really, really big, being a woman or being a man, if a man is not able to perform, let's just say, it's very big for him because he identify himself from the thing of being able to perform or being able to get that erection or orgasm or whatever that is. So that is a very, very important part of every man and woman, to be honest. And women feeling happy about themselves, their body image, feeling sexy about themselves is how they see themselves as. So I think this has a very big impact on people's mental health. It's just a shame that people are not, or were not at least, able to talk about their sexuality and what they are, their sexual orientation, their sexual needs. It's not so spoken. And unfortunately, it being a very stigma and a very taboo area, I think kind of made people's mental health or them being depressed because of that even much more than what it could be if somebody actually spoke out loud about it. Like, if you talk about your sexual health and if you say like, this is how I feel, because a lot of the times when you see like men and women, they say like, especially those with let's say premature ejaculation or somebody who's not able to orgasm. A lot of the time they come back and say, I don't even feel like a man anymore, or I don't feel like a woman anymore. And when they say things like that, that's when you realize how powerful that need and that sexuality is to someone's identity. And when the identity is at risk, when you're self-questioning yourself, the first thing it affects is your mental health. And it also affects it because it is very shush shush, because you don't know who to talk to about it. You don't know who is going to fix this or help you. You feel like something is wrong. You feel like you're not good enough, and you're beating yourself up with it. And you're probably getting terribly depressed. And there is a lot of shame with your performance. And I feel like there's a lot of low self esteem that could be associated with the performance of, both men and women. So I feel like sexual health has such a major role in one person's confidence and how they feel, and mental health and how they carry things.
Is it right to assume that when people are coming to you with sexual health concerns, that there is a correlation to their mental health, and then you can't actually treat one without the other?
Yes, it's really, really very true how you said this, because all our sexual health units and workplaces here have at least 1 to 2 psychologists working on site with us. Like, for example, there could be a person coming for an STI screen, and I could have kindled things about, have you been forced to have any sex? And then she or he could have felt comfortable to come out with something that they haven't come out for a long time. And I haven't, like I said, I have only half an hour, so I can't just say, okay, that was good meeting you. Now that you've told me you've been raped when you're 16, that's very good. I'll see you in my next consult. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
I just can't do that. That's not how you deal with life, and that's not how you deal with patients. But I know sometimes you have like a time restriction, and doctors sometimes say, okay, fine, I'll see you next week. But no, no, this is what I think is different from other field of medicine. When you dealing with mental health, and when you're dealing with sexual health and things that are actually taboo, you can't sometimes just get and suss things out of people and then just cut them off and say, okay, I'll see you in about 2 weeks. It doesn't quite work like that. So we have psychologists and psychiatrists, even psychiatrists in the hospital at board. And when we need to refer and when we have a person, who's completely having a meltdown or falling apart, there's no way we'll cut them down. We will send them. So I will talk to them for half an hour, bring the psychologist in, introduce them to her or him. They will take them. They have an hour session for them, calm them
Oh,
down. Sometimes, we make a cup of tea, get them a cake, give them a hug, whatever it takes. Like,
that
it's just
sounds just beautiful. Yeah, it's such
yes,
a
yes.
wholesome way of
I'm
treating
madly in love. Yes, I'm
treating
madly
something
in
that is so, like you said, it's so hush hush everywhere, especially in our culture, and especially in, I would say, in our culture anywhere, in our societies anywhere in the world, and not just in India. Like the
no,
fact that
no.
you belong to India, it's like, let's not ever talk
That's
about
even
this.
worse. I know that's worse. But like I said,
Yeah,
I work in here in Sydney, right? But then people have the same feeling.
yeah,
People feel extremely mortified when they are identified with an STI, and they come with terrible guilt and shame, that comes with it. And just to make them feel like a normal, person, and you have your personality and your love and the person you are has nothing to do with your sexual needs or who you slept with and how you got this STI, and making them feel that way is actually, it's a process and it's an art. And I think, yeah, I love what we do. And I think there are a whole, not just me, there's a whole bunch of sexual health specialists here who love their job and who do this, and our counselors are just absolutely
amazing.
fantastic.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
so
So
yeah, so I do agree with you, Nishka. I don't think we should be taking care of sexual health or mental health or any kind of personal things like that without having a psychologist on board. And a lot of the time, sexual health affects people's relationships, and nobody again talks about it. It could be like, what's going on, what's going on, what's going on. Abhi bhi, pregnant nahi hui, bahu kyun nahi hui, but there is no further going and talking about things. So when it comes to again somebody else's sexual health, everybody's like, go and see your gynecologist, do all your fertility tests. I think
mm.
even fertility specialists, I'm sure, should have a whole bunch of psychologists on board. No, we have to
Yeah,
talk about.
because actually, when I was thinking of this podcast conversation itself, I so many conversations started coming to mind, and I was talking to Malaika about this as well. That when throughout your life, especially when you're younger, at least for me, when I was a lot younger, and I've had these conversations with girlfriends in college when I was working, and there was this statement which has come up so many times that I've heard from women who are in my age group, women who are older as well, and women who are younger. So I can't even say it's like an age factor. So
No.
so you hear people say when it comes to being intimate with your partner that, you know what, just do it, na? How does it matter? Don't you love the person? Why aren't you
Mm,
doing what they're asking you to do? What's the big
mm,
deal?
mm,
And whenever I used to hear this, I used to always think there's something wrong. And I couldn't understand at that point when I heard this and why did I think it was wrong. But I could never imagine doing something like that if I wasn't comfortable. Um, but why do we as people fall into this trap of doing something for our partners, because we just think that, oh, we have to do it to keep them happy,
mm,
otherwise we are just not valuable in the relationship, especially when we're
mm,
uncomfortable with something sexually. Could be trying
mhm,
something new, could be
mhm.
just maybe you're just not in the mood, or could be so many things when you just don't want to do it, but you do it because you're like, you know what, if I don't do it, then I'm the bad person. Why does that happen?
And I always believe that it comes from the culture of where we have been constantly told that we have to be good and better than what we are. So it always has to be better than what we are. We haven't been raised in a culture where we have said, oh, she got only 60% in her science. Ah, yeah, okay, that's all. She doesn't like science, maybe, Usne hard work kiya, she got 60, that's enough. Never. I have never. I don't think even now. I don't think that's ever. That's ever. We always in the, and we could have got in art, maybe in art, we would get 90 or A or B or whatever that is in art. But that is not even like who sees art? वो कुछ भी नहीं है. And science, and then immediately you have been compared to, did you see Asha? She got 92 in science. And did you see? And so it is called, I mean, it's constantly like looking, like, there's this also saying, constantly looking at a fish who's swimming in the water and constantly saying, did you see that elephant? Did you see that elephant? So it's, we're kind of conditioned by somebody who loves us. Like, for example, our parents, when our parents keep telling us it's not good enough, two things. One is we believe that somebody who loves us can keep saying that it is not good enough, can keep telling us that we are not good enough. And we also believe that the reason that they're saying we are not good enough is because they love us. So that we will improve and become good one day. And we kind of conditioned to that. That people who love you will come and tell you that you're not good enough. And the reason that they're saying it is because they love you, and we are conditioned to that. And with the same condition, we go into a relationship or into the bedroom, let's just say. And when a person actually says, "Arey, come on, yeah, do na." I mean, let's say someone does not like to do oral, or they don't like doing blowjobs, so they really have a very bad gag reflex, and they really cannot, right? But no. So unfortunately for the person, or for whatever in the relationship, if they're really someone who fancy oral, let's just say, and they say, "Hey, come on, yaar, what is the big deal? Everyone does oral." And you kind of make that person feel like they're not good enough. You kind of make them feel like something is wrong with you. How come you're not able to do what, I don't know, X, Y, and Z? And you're also trying to make them feel insecure about themselves in keeping the relationship. So it's like almost like, if you don't do this, there is X, Y, and Z who can actually do this. And the person is questioning themselves. They're questioning their confidence. They're saying, "Oh my God, do I have to do this? And if I don't do this, will he or she go to someone else? Am I not satisfying their needs?" And those kind of things. So they start doing things that they don't want to do, they're not comfortable doing, or they even, like, nowadays Google and all this. So the poor things, I think most of the time they're sitting and Googling as to how I can do this better or how I can do that better, and which is really sad. Which is really sad. And I feel like this is not enough if you educate the person alone who we are trying to say, say no. How do we say no? How do we say not to do it? It is not, that's not enough. But also the person who's actually asking, that is where the communication comes in place. It's for that person who's in the relationship to make sure that your partner probably has a gag reflex. You probably can't do oral. Yes, maybe oral is pleasurable, but how are you going to deal with it? It's not nice really to go and say, "Arey, do now, everybody is doing, what is the big deal?" And that's not how communication works, or that's not how a sensitive human being actually should talk about this. It should be a little bit more sensitive. Yes, but he should say, "Oh, I really like it, if you do it because I feel pleasure." And it's very important that he or she communicates it. But it is also very important to see how you can do that. Can we use different toys, or can we use something else that make feels like that oral sex, that you're not able to do it, and make the partner in that relationship a little bit more comfortable, rather than guilt tripping them into what they cannot do for you or what they cannot give you. And the partner also takes this very positively. We have to take everything in the positive stride. If you can't dance, you have to take it in a positive stride and go and learn dancing. So this partner also takes it in a very, very positive stride and goes around Googling and finding, how to do better oral sex. And, poor thing. And you're thinking, well, she shouldn't have to. She shouldn't have to. Nobody should have to go and force themselves to do things that is not their forte. And they shouldn't be able to. She should be able to communicate about this. And I think that's where the conditioning comes from. You think this guy loves you because he has now told you that you're not good enough in doing this and you have to improve in something. And he's given you a task that you want to go and improve in. And you are very busily doing that because that's what your parents did. They gave you tasks that you had to improve in, and prove that you're not useless, or you're not, so you have a task that you have to prove that, oh, I can do oral sex, and you're going to go and work towards it. So that is something that we are kind of, I think, that upbringing. It's something that we are used to, and we are happy to do that even in bedrooms and relationships and a whole bunch of things.
So it's right to assume then how our parents love us and treat us manifests in our relationships, in our bedrooms, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you can say no to your parent and get away with it, you'll probably be very confident and say no in the bedroom and get away with it.
Damn, that's the biggest learning.
Yes, it's because you can't say no. Can you say no and then get away with it? No, and it's like no, no तो हो ही नहीं सकता. How can you say no? No, उसको ये क्या बोलेंगे, वो क्या बोलेंगे, what will this person say, that person say, but she is doing, he is doing. Eventually, they coerce you into doing whatever you said no in the first place. So that is a norm. That is how the upbringing works. And people who love you actually can say, please, 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 karo na mere liye. No, she is doing, no, ho ja rahi hai, tum bhi jao na. If people can actually cohort and you believe that these are people who love you, the same thing can happen when you grow up. They can actually say, Arey, please, please, now let's do anal. What is there? Big deal, kar lo na.
Yeah.
And you feel like, oh, they have said, please, and I'm doing. And you don't even see this as manipulation. You don't even see this as coercion.
Yeah, because you think this is exactly how love is, because that's how your parents loved you.
And this,
So you're
yeah,
like,
and
yeah, of
yeah.
course. I mean, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Why
Yeah,
would
and
this
you say
person
no,
hurt
and
me?
people will say please, 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 and then you have to say yes. This is something
Yeah,
that and if you say that, oh, अच्छी बच्ची है, yes बोल दिया, इतना please बोलने के बाद अच्छी बच्ची है ना, she said yes. So
yeah,
in that
yeah,
way, you're a very obedient child. You're a
yeah.
nice child, and those of us who say no means no are very rebellious. So
Yeah,
that's
you're immediately labeled as a difficult person, a difficult
very
child, a
yeah,
difficult
very difficult.
partner.
ऐसा पाला है उसका ना
Ha
I
ha ha
lost
ha
my
ha.
mother actually when I was very young, around 21. And I think every time I said no and I put my foot down to saying no, I can't, or whatever, people always said, oh my God, how has your mom raised you? Oh my God, she's, so stubborn. And I used to think, yeah, really? And honestly, thank God, couldn't give a fuck. But I think that's very important. It's very, very important because if somebody, let's say, you have like an uncle G or auntie G or somebody coming, and people say, go, aja, aja, beto, or, come and sit on my lap, or, cuddle them, or, and if a child actually says no, you should be able to say, it's okay, she doesn't want to. That culture has to come because only then, because child ne no bola, and then you said okay because they said no. Instead, if you say, don't be like that, your uncle's calling you, he wants to cuddle and kiss you, go and cuddle him. Agar वैसे bola, and then what are you teaching her? Then you're saying, even if you say no, if people say
It's not
please,
an,
come on, do
yeah,
it,
yeah.
वो कर रही है, ये करे, you do it. So it has to change there. I think it has to change right there. No means no has to change there.
Yeah.
Then as we grow into the bedroom, we can say, and we won't feel guilty to say no as well, right? Like you said, it is in the middle of we're having sex, we're not in a war zone. So it's a very it's a very pleasant feeling, and everybody's in a high hormone and all good things are happening there. And saying no shouldn't almost feel like you're going to get into a war zone.
Yeah.
No,
You
you should
shouldn't
be
be
like,
scared.
no, you shouldn't be
Yeah.
scared, and you shouldn't say, if I say no, then will he say, yeah, whatever, and please, if I say no, will he then not call me tomorrow? Just all those fears that you'll have associated with the word no shouldn't be there. No is people are saying these days, no is a full sentence on its own. There is no argument, there is no saying, but if she did, no, 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 no is no. And that has to be from inherited and planted in yourself from your elders,
As a
from
very young age. Yeah.
the very,
I think
very
that's when
young.
you have a healthy relationship with no. You think that, okay, it's okay for me to say no, versus
Yeah.
when you grow older and you realize you're saying no and you're being negatively treated because
Yes.
you have no idea. But then when you learn
Yes.
as a kid that no is the
Yes.
same as yes,
Yes.
then you are like comfortable and happy. Like, you know what?
Yes.
My
Yes.
no is
And no
enough.
doesn't define like a no shouldn't define whether somebody is going to come for coffee tomorrow, or just because you say no for, I don't know, shouldn't define whether they want to have a relationship with you. So, when before we say no, we think about all these things. People don't say no because of all the fear of whatever X, Y, and Z. And it shouldn't be there. No should be a normal sentence. No should be like yes. So,
Ah.
if you're having sex, you're having a great time, it's like, do you want to do anus? Like, nahi, yeah, not today. No. Simple, move on. You got to move on from there.
Mm.
They shouldn't worry about अगर मैंने no बोला पता नहीं कल किसके साथ करेगा ना. Or
Correct, correct,
yeah,
correct.
that fear shouldn't be there. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
important.
rightly said. Interestingly, this is something Nishta and I were discussing a couple of times and before the podcast began as well. The consent and the idea of what you were just talking about, just saying no, right? And being able to say no without having to justify it. We see the jokes about, oh, I have a headache today, but Do you have to say you have a headache today? Can it just be no? Can it just be not today? Or any of those things? Or, maybe we tried something last week, so why don't you want to do it today? Or whatever. And even in relationships, both partners need to want to have sex. It can't just be that, I want to, then why don't you want to, or whatever, things like that. But in all these situations, I mean, you've spoken about it just now that, it has to be something that's normalized in your life, the
Yes.
ability to be able to say no from a very young age. But now we can't go back into, back about 20 years and change that.
Okay.
How do couples today, what do you tell, your patients, or just advice to listeners, that how do you start saying that no? How do you start building that, relationship with your partners, whether one night stands, whether multiple sex partners or relationships, whatever it might be? How do you start doing that today?
Look, I mean, with you're right. You don't have to actually use the word no. Consent can be in various forms, It can be something like, Are nahi yaar, I have a headache today. It can be that, but that is a very clear cut, I don't want to have sex with you. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be no, I don't not want to. You don't have to verbalize it like that. It could be anything. And it could, sometimes it's really hard in a long, it's easier, I think, in casual relationship. It's really hard in a long-term relationship because you want to keep the relationship going. You want the dynamics going, but you still want to be able to say no to things that you don't want to do, or on days that you don't want to do, which I feel like is very, very, very difficult. Initially in a relationship, I think people try. I'm sure people try. And as the relationship grows, it just becomes too much. Sometimes they start thinking, is it even worth it? 10 minute ka ye baat hai na, kar do. Just do it, get in the, it's not even worth the argument. And then it goes on till tomorrow breakfast, to subah subah utke, he'll come with a long face, all this stuff, um, just to keep peace and just to keep things, people actually do it. But to be honest, even that is consent enough for the other parties. What is important, like if your husband or wife, if you feel like you want to do it, and if your husband says, I'm just going to watch this Netflix and I'll come, later, and he does actually sleeps off in the couch, let's just say, no. And if he does it more than 2 3 times, it's kind of saying like, I don't want to have sex with you, in a way. It doesn't have to be no, but I mean, nobody is so dumb. We got to pick these things up. And I think if it is happening in a regular basis, communication in every way is so important. So you might want to go and actually ask. Don't be dumb and say, Are kya yaar, come, no, why don't you? No, that's not, no, no. You want to really go and ask, okay, I understand that this is what has been happening, but what is underlying this? What is it? Is it because, like, is it genuinely like physically you're not aroused or interested, or mentally is something stressing you, or something is happening between the relationship? There's so much to address with that, and I think that is very, very important. And the consent has body language, sign languages, and how people behave also has to be taken as consent, especially in long-term relationships, I think, because that is becoming something that people are not even, like, a lot of the times people don't even know that their partners are saying no, that their partners have not been giving consent, and they have been coercing. Like, the minute she says, Are nahi yaar, main bahut tired hu, immediately you make her feel guilty, saying, Are hamesha tired ho, you're always tired. And you want to say, you've got 3 kids, you've just done your dishes, and probably the buy is not coming tomorrow morning. What do you expect me to actually be? So just making her feel guilty that she's always tired, or she's not coming and having sex. So that's not how this works. So if she says nahi yaar, it's like, it's fine at that point. Don't coerce her to have sex with you and then think that no, usne bhi kiya, usne nahi kiya. She's just doing it to shut you up because she's got so much else to do after this 10 minutes, and does not want to wake up in the morning to this grumpy face of argument, or whatever that is, that this may prolong into. So clearly she's doing for that reason. So instead of doing that, it is worthwhile, when you're going out, I don't know, maybe say, okay, today's a date day, no cooking, no cleaning, nothing. Plan something for people, organize something for people. And then possibly, it's again, even for them, we're talking about people who have to say no, right? But we also have to talk about people who have to communicate about yes. Because for some people, probably wanting to have sex 2 to 3 times a week is important. It's very, very important. It's an important need. And you're right. If somebody else is not able to give that, again, rather than say hurtful things, and say you're always tired, "Arey, ye nahi ho raha," and things like that, I think take time to communicate. And I think, uh, I mean, I know I sound like, you have counselors for everything, but I feel like it's very important, have someone to be able to communicate and say, look, my needs are more than yours. How do we do this? I mean, what if we do? Like, if we keep a cook who cooks dinner every night, will that make your life easier? Will it make you a little bit less stressed? So we can do something. So every other weekend should be like, ask if my mom or your mom can watch the kids. And do you think, agar if we have like a day and a half, do you think will be? So figure out what can make her want to say yes. For all you know, even you actually coming and asking that question would want her jump on you and have sex with you, to be honest. Sometimes you don't really, you really don't even have to actually, you actually don't even have, this is what I'm thinking, rather than being that, sometimes being sensitive is what people actually need. And just your words, just you saying, "Arey, kya ho raha hai? You're tired. I understand. What kya kar sakte hain hum? Bolo na, I want to do it more. What can we do?" And then, just saying her that, I'm sure if you come up with things like this, just suggestions, that's enough. Now, us raat to definitely wo to karne wali hai hi. You just, you convince her that she's going to, because sometimes that's all you need, your brain is so stressed. You feel not loved in a way, and you feel not recognized in a way, like you're doing so much but I'm not recognized. You feel like I'm not getting enough attention. You don't feel sexy, you don't feel attention. The minute somebody throws the whole attention light on you and makes you feel like you're so important, how can I make your life any better? I feel like, all the tiredness of your life, it just lightens up. And it is so important for partners to actually figure that out, whether it's a short relationship, long-term relationship, or, gay or lesbian couple, what is that the other person actually wants and needs to feel sexy, to feel wanting to have sex. And you need to actually speak about that. And that communication is very important.
In terms of the man always just wanting it, or the man always wanting to try new things, or all the statements you've made till now. And even the questions that I was asked as well was about how does a girl or woman learn to say no or whatever. And the part of me was trying to figure out, how often is it reversed. And for the life of me, at least I've never heard a situation where it's reversed. But just out of curiosity, do you get cases of the flip side as well?
I think so. I think there is. I'm sure women are very, very horny, and I think no, and no, and I think the negative side to that is, again, when women actually push this through, and if they want to have sex and the man's not interested, let's just say, I think the fear of being slut shamed or fear of being called a horny bitch is very big when compared to men. When men are horny, there's no such word to say, "Oh my God," there's no such word to describe it. But when women actually say, "Come on, yeah, I want to do it at least 2 to 3 times a week," I don't think we are still so open enough to be able to verbalize it without a judgment. And that's important. Even women themselves judging women, or I think the judgment that comes with this is what keeps the women shut. They may masturbate, or they may actually find toys and stuff like that, and help themselves, rather than actually go and confront the person that they're having relationship with, saying the amount of time you're having sex is not enough. And I think it, because shaming them for wanting more sex is so easy. And I think that happens a lot. So in a relationship, look, I can't generalize and say all men, to be honest. I'm sure there's some really, really lovely men out there who are really very sex positive, who are feminist as well, to be honest, and are out there to give and ask and make people feel the right way. And there are people who don't actually, I'm sure there are people who don't slut shame people, who don't talk about people. But for the rest of them who do, I think it's time to just sit back and work on relationships. Women are very horny beings, and they, in fact, different age and different part of your cycle and periods and this and that, you can be really extremely horny. And And honestly, your whole premenstrual shebang, with your mood swings and you want things to fall apart, and having good sex actually comes, very hand in hand. And I don't think that amount of psychology is actually known or understood by any man, because you are grumpy, and you're very sharp, you're very grumpy, you're very teary, but at the same time, that is your horniest period, unfortunately. So I think that's very important, in a relationship, that somebody actually knows, what's going to actually fix her is a good sex, to be honest. um she'll probably
Yeah, that
cry
was really
after
funny.
it. No, it's true though, isn't it? Like, it's true. And I don't think men are educated so much. How
Yeah.
many men actually know that that's what's happening within, women don't go and talk with the fear of thinking, oh, I don't know what he's going to think if I say I want to have sex. We wait for them to initiate, or we
Yeah.
wait for them, to do that. So which again, I think is we're a long way from them. Like, I think it'll change. We're teaching women to communicate. We're teaching men how women feel, and we're teaching men about menstruation and PMS and a lot of things. So I think it's like a group effort where everything will change. Like I said, communication will change, and saying no will be very easily,
Cool.
taken upon. And like I said, saying yes can be yes in different forms. Like I said, they don't have to say yes, let's have sex, but it can be something like, she might be all dressed in a lingerie, all cuddled up, or there are different ways to show signs of, they want to do it today. So I think all that should be taken as consent, and people should start pretending like they didn't know. She said no.
And that also goes both ways. It can't just be key, I want sex. There has to be more than that. And need to, much like you need to understand the science for no, you need to be able to understand the science for yes. I've never actually heard anyone put words to that. That we need to also learn how to verbalize yes. It can't be a demand that you just make.
No.
Similarly, some people aren't as comfortable saying it, so therefore, what you said, she might be curled up with her lingerie or something like that. But we need to pick up all of those signs, and how you tied it up perfectly was communication. We,
Definitely. When you're in a long-term
yeah,
relationship, you kind of figure it out. Now you kind of figure out the body signs of she's up
true,
for it or she's not up for it. Easy, no?
yeah.
You'll see the boiling face, or you'll see her all calm. She's gonna do it.
I think it
But
again it boils down to just being very tuned into each other, right? Like
yeah,
if
Yeah.
you're
absolutely.
tuned into each other, I think it's
Yeah, and
easy
just
to
be open to it.
understand.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Both of you
yeah,
understand. Both
yeah,
of you understand body language. It's not it's not rocket science. It's very
yeah.
simple,
Yeah.
and I think consent can be understood in very easy way. It's an excuse to say that I didn't know that she didn't want or he didn't want, because a lot of the times it's very obvious. It's very obvious.
It's very
And I think
obvious. Yeah.
in casual relationships, sorry, you were asking about that, and I feel like that can be a little bit hard because you're just someone you don't know. You don't know, like you said, you're in the heat of the moment. A lot of the times, you probably had a couple of drinks, and both of you want to have sex. Sometimes you may have condoms, maybe not. If you're strong enough to say no, I don't want to do it without a condom because I'm not comfortable, that is great.
Mm.
But a lot of the times it is really hard. I understand it's really hard. And if you don't have a condom, or if your condom is actually sitting in a car, very, very bad place to store condom because of the heat and cold and heat and cold. So it rips and it breaks so easily. So condoms and loops that are stored in the car bonnet is a very bad idea. And it's also a bad idea to just constantly, like, I think a wallet is like your handbag is okay because it comes with you and goes with you and stuff. It doesn't just sit in the heat in the car. But yeah, so like that, we do have a lot of condom breaks and things like that that can happen if that is what the case, or even unprotected sex. So in that case, I feel like, if that is something that you really don't want to do, not comfortable, you have to be prepared in that way. Carry condoms in your bag, be able to negotiate
Mm.
that, or get regular STI testing. Make sure you have a good backup contraception, because every time, if this is what you're doing and and you're not able to negotiate condom, you don't want to keep using the morning after pill, no. So you have to make sure you have a good contraception in place, and just every 3 to 6 months get yourself regularly tested, so you're not having an STI if you're not able to negotiate, condom use in casual relationships. So I think that's very important. So those kind of safe sexual practices is very important around casual sex as well.
Talking about that and talking about, relationships as well, going back to that for a minute, because as you said, when it's casual and when it's a fling or when it's one night stands or whatever, anyway, the conversation gets a little more complicated. But coming back to relationships and partners, Again, this is a little bit of a reiteration of the previous question, but you know what you just said, being caught in the heat of the moment. And it's different when you're having a conversation, it's different when you haven't gotten into the act yet. But
Hmm.
very often when you're in the act and then it's like, oh, let's try this, or you hear something that we haven't done before, ye nahi kiya hai, or even without saying it, one of the partners starts progressing towards something. And then you kind of like caught for a second, like, okay, if I stop him or her now, but I'm going to go with him for now. If I stop him, will it kill the mood completely? Will we just stop having sex and will I just ruin the mood? And I would have ruined the evening. And then there's that whole split second judgment that you need to make, that do I let it happen or do I not let it happen? And if he is doing it, it's happening organically. So let it just happen. Um, is it manipulative to do it in the act, or is it the benefit of the doubt that maybe that's just happening organically and you just need to decide what you're comfortable with and not comfortable with? But then how in the middle do you say no and go on and still go through with
So
it?
if somebody actually knows that is something that you've said no to before, and they bring it again in the middle of an act, and if your brain is actually thinking everything that you just said, Malaika, your heat is gone. It's already gone. You are in a, honestly, your entire estrogen that was so high just dropped completely down. And started thinking about, I don't want to do this, it's going to be painful, why is he asking me now, but I really like what you do. If your brain is going in the rate of thinking that,
Mm,
actually the amount of high, you might still be kissing him or cuddling him, but you're definitely dropped from where you were. You're still not there. So that's a shame. So that's a shame that you have to recognize that it's dropped.
mm,
And if he doesn't recognize that, asking her this in the, like last time he asked or she asked, and we have said no in the first place, and asking her this in the middle of a sexual act is actually going to drop her, sexual drive that is there
mm,
at the moment. If he or she has not realized this and thought that they could actually slide something that you hate or didn't want to in between a sexual act, that is manipulative and very inconsiderate. And
mm,
very inconsiderate of the fact that they didn't care how your mood might go off. You're worried about his mood or her mood going off. If I say no to this, let's say anal sex, I'm just going to take it as an example. If I say, if I'm not going to have anal now, will his mood or her mood go, and you're still continuing to kiss and you're still hugging and all this is going in your head, which means it's clearly, like I said, your mood's gone. But the person who asked actually did not think that, she already said no to anal. But if I ask her now while we're doing it, it'll probably make upset her. It'll probably spoil her mood. Did not think
mm,
about it. Not a second. So without thinking about that, if that came in again in the middle of when we were so high, you should move back, because it's gone. It's gone anyway. It just dropped anyway. You're overthinking, your pleasure of that moment's gone. They didn't respect what you
mm,
said in the first go. And like you said, this is more like we're talking in terms of short term, relationships. We're not talking long term, relationships where you have time to actually date and explain and talk and sexual needs. That can be a little bit nicely done in the long term.
mm,
When you're doing casual sex or when you meet someone for the second time, and the first time they've already mentioned this, and the second time, like you said, you're drunk, you're in the heat of the moment and it's all happening, and they still didn't bother. They still couldn't, be bothered, and they came up with this. It's a big no. It's a big turn off. It'll turn me off. Absolutely. And yes, I mean, I might say no again, and we might still continue probably, having sex on that night. Let's just say, but I might still say no. I don't think I am someone who would say sex has to be pleasurable. I'm a big believer of that. It has to be pleasurable in every way, whatever it is you're doing, whether it's foreplay, whether you're kissing in the car, or whether it's fingering or penetrative. I don't think it's worth tolerating the pain. Like, for example, like anal may not be for everyone. And so for some people, vaginal sex or, having the size of a different person's penis or having like about a whole hand put in may be painful. So sex should not be compromised to tolerate pain for someone else. That's I'm very clear about that. And I think people should not tolerate that at all. Sex has to be pleasurable for you. It's okay to be self-centered. It's okay to
Mhm.
be selfish, because sometimes you have to be self-centered and selfish because this is your sexual needs. Yes, you have to give what your partner needs, and he can give you what you need, and it's all very mutual and consensual. But it cannot be painful and tolerate. And some people, the words we associate, the adjectives we associate with sex is not that. I will definitely not associate those things with sex. I think it has to, like I said, consensual, pleasurable, romantic, love. I could associate all those words with sex, but tolerating, withstanding, pain, torture, all those things, stigma, what people say,
Yeah.
all those things are not the words that have to be associated with sex at all. And I think everybody needs to be very, very clear with that.
So just to kind of put that all together, one would be communication is important. You do need to talk about what you are okay with. And then I guess what you're also saying is you need to listen to yourself and be okay with the fact that I don't want this right now. Or, maybe I want it tomorrow, maybe I won't, but right now, not
No,
happening. And then be able to say that.
yeah,
Just no. So
yeah.
communication and then listening to yourself as well.
And listening to them as well, that's also a part
Yeah.
of communication. So I think
Yeah.
that's very important. So let's just say, like, I don't know, in the long run you meet up with someone 2-3 times, and if they say, something that I really like, I'd like to try in the long run, and then probably it's worthwhile communicating, saying, but I'm really worried or I'm scared, can we just first, probably, I don't know, try a finger, could we do these? There's different ways to talk this through, rather than doing it then or not, or guilt tripping someone into, come on, why can't you do it, everybody, that's different. Then again, it's about being sensitive, it's about talking, and if somebody cannot do it, they cannot do it. You just have to accept it and see how else you can do it. There are so many toys these days, there's those flashlights and this and that you can use for feeling of whether you want to do it anal or oral, and you can probably try and do something like that because your partner said they're not comfortable. Simple as that. It's not rocket science. So
So maybe today, before we wrap up, we're gonna ask you our famous raise the brow question. So maybe how do you think we as a global society of Indians everywhere can raise the bar for ourselves and therein raise the bar for everybody around us in any way possible?
Nishka, I think we're already doing it. I think the bunch of us who have already started or being a part of this community that we are now have already raised our bar. I think we are a group of people. Yes, I think we are a group of people whose bar is very raised, and and we are trying to reach those people who are there, who are raising their hands up to us, saying, "Can you pull me out as well? I want to raise my bar to yours." So I think that is fantastic, and I think education is fantastic, and you guys using the the social media, the podcast, everything that we are doing to actually bring the word, and also sharing our own real life stories, telling that this is not just textbook that we are telling you, this is something that we have gone through or we are doing in our day to day lives. And that is very, very important. I think like there is this whole single parent community and group where there are business women and entrepreneurs and people talking about it and saying, oh, this is not okay, domestic violence is not okay, abuse is not okay, and stuff like that. So a lot of us people coming out and saying that this is not okay, and and we have done it. We can't just say, oh, you do it, and people are not going to listen to you. So for us to have raised our bars and be able to say, I'm doing it, and there are a whole bunch of people who are doing it, whether you want to do it or not, it's up to you, and this is how you can do it. So I think that's what we're already doing, and I think we're doing well, we're getting
I
there.
think you're absolutely right. Clap for all of us. Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe it was super amazing having you.
Hey there! Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Raise the Brow. Follow the podcast on Instagram and YouTube. And hey, slide into our DMs because we would love to hear from you. Don't forget to share the podcast or this very episode with anyone who you think needs this in their life.